Major Nathan Cross stood in the bustling terminal of Atlanta International Airport, a decorated military officer accustomed to discipline and honor. He had returned early from deployment to surprise his wife. Exactly what he had been planning for weeks. But when he spotted her at gate C-42 with someone who wasn't supposed to be there, something inside him shattered. What should have been a joyful reunion became the spark for something much darker. In that moment, Nathan realized it wasn't a coincidence. It was betrayal. The intimacy in their posture, the way she laughed, the way this stranger's hand rested on her lower back while other travelers rushed past them. He knew this wasn't innocent. He wasn't just another soldier. He wasn't just another husband. He was a man who had sacrificed everything for his country and family, and he could feel it. This wasn't about a misunderstanding. It was about being deceived, disrespected, and betrayed by the person he trusted most. And Major Nathan Cross wasn't the type of man to let that slide. What happened next would change everything for his marriage and send a powerful message no one would forget. Keep watching to see how one moment of discovery turned into a confrontation that shocked everyone in that airport. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Trust me, you'll want to see how this story unfolds. Major Nathan Cross, a man used to commanding respect and leading troops through dangerous missions, had no reason to expect that his surprise return to Atlanta International Airport on October 15, 2023, would become the scene of a transformation he never saw coming. Dressed in his combat fatigues and worn desert boots, he moved through the crowded terminal with the same quiet confidence that accompanied him through every military operation. The smell of coffee and fast food filled the air, creating the usual chaos that airports are known for. As he made his way toward the arrivals area, Nathan checked his phone, reviewing the text message he'd sent his wife Sarah 3 hours earlier from his layover in Frankfurt. His mind was racing with anticipation, strategically planning the perfect surprise reunion after 8 months deployed overseas. But despite his excitement, something was off. He could feel the nervous energy of travelers around him, the constant announcements echoing through the terminal. Everything was as it should be, but then he saw her near gate C-42. Nathan's journey to this moment had begun 8 months earlier, in February of 2023, when he received his deployment orders to Afghanistan. He remembered that cold winter morning in their suburban home in Marietta, Georgia, when he sat Sarah down at their kitchen table and broke the news. She had cried, of course. They both knew what 8 months apart would mean. But she had promised him. She had looked him directly in the eyes, held his hands across that wooden table they'd picked out together at a furniture store 3 years prior, and promised him that she would wait, that she would be strong, that their love could survive anything, even an ocean and a war zone between them. Nathan had believed her. Why wouldn't he? They had been together for 9 years total, married for 6 of those years. They had met at a 4th of July barbecue hosted by a mutual friend back in 2014. Sarah had been wearing a red sundress, and Nathan had been in his dress uniform, having just returned from a previous deployment. There had been an instant connection. She had understood what it meant to love a soldier, or so he thought. Her father had been in the Navy, so she grew up in a military household. She knew about the sacrifices, the long separations, the missed birthdays and anniversaries. Or at least that's what Nathan had believed. Those first few weeks of deployment had been the hardest. Nathan was stationed at Bagram Airfield, working as an operations officer coordinating supply chains and tactical movements across the region. The work was grueling, 12 to 14-hour days in the scorching Afghan heat, followed by restless nights and cramped quarters where the sounds of distant explosions sometimes interrupted his sleep. But through it all, he had held on to thoughts of Sarah. He had her picture taped inside his footlocker. A photo from their wedding day, her in that beautiful white dress, him in his formal military blues, both of them smiling like they had won the lottery. Every morning before his shift started, he would look at that photo and remind himself why he was there, what he was fighting for. He had video called her every chance he got. Sometimes the internet connection was terrible, their faces pixelating and freezing on the screen, but just hearing her voice made everything bearable. She would tell him about her day, working as a pharmaceutical sales representative for a company called MedTech Solutions. She would complain about her demanding boss, tell him funny stories about her coworkers, update him on their friends back home. She seemed fine, maybe a little distant at times, but Nathan had attributed that to the stress of separation. He never imagined that distance meant something else entirely. Lieutenant James Rivera, Nathan's closest friend and confidant, had been stationed with him at Bagram. James was a 32-year-old officer from Texas, married with 2 young daughters back home. The 2 men had bonded over their shared experiences of missing their families, of trying to maintain marriages across impossible distances. During their rare moments of downtime, they would sit in the mess hall over lukewarm coffee and talk about their plans for when they got home. James wanted to take his family to Disney World. Nathan wanted to surprise Sarah with a weekend getaway to the mountains, somewhere quiet where they could reconnect without distractions. But James had noticed something that Nathan hadn't. Around month 5 of the deployment in July, Sarah's communication patterns had changed. Nathan would mention excitedly that he had a video call scheduled with Sarah, but then she would cancel at the last minute. She had excuses. She wasn't feeling well. She had to work late. Her phone was acting up. Once or twice, that would be understandable. But it became a pattern. James had gently tried to bring it up to Nathan one evening as they sat outside their barracks, watching the sunset over the Afghan mountains. "Brother, I don't want to overstep," James had said carefully. "But have you noticed Sarah's been harder to reach lately?" Nathan had bristled slightly at the suggestion. "She's busy, man. Her job is demanding. I can't expect her to drop everything every time I have a free moment." James had nodded slowly, clearly wanting to say more but holding back. "Yeah, you're right. I'm sure it's nothing. Just keep your eyes open, you know?" Nathan had laughed it off at the time, but the seed of doubt had been planted, even if he wasn't ready to acknowledge it. By August, the communication had become even more sporadic. Text messages would go unanswered for hours, sometimes days. When Sarah did respond, her messages were short, lacking the warmth and detail they used to have. "Miss you" and "love you" had become automatic responses rather than genuine expressions of feeling. Nathan tried to tell himself it was normal, that 8 months was a long time, that people get busy with their own lives. But deep down, something gnawed at him. Something felt wrong. Then came September, and with it, an unexpected opportunity. Nathan's commanding officer, Colonel Patricia Hendricks, had approached him with news that his unit was being rotated out earlier than expected. Instead of returning in late November as originally planned, they would be heading home in mid-October. Nathan's heart had soared at the news. He immediately thought about surprising Sarah. He wouldn't tell her about the early return. He would show up at the airport, flowers in hand, and sweep her off her feet. It would be like a scene from a movie, the kind of reunion that military families dream about. He had conspired with James to keep the surprise secret. James, ever the loyal friend, had helped Nathan coordinate the logistics. They arranged for Nathan to fly from Bagram to Germany, then from Frankfurt to Atlanta. Sarah's flight from Miami, where she had told Nathan she was attending a pharmaceutical conference, was scheduled to arrive at Atlanta International around the same time as Nathan's international flight. Nathan had checked her itinerary, Delta Flight 2847, arriving at 3:47 p.m. at Gate C42. He had planned to be there waiting when she came through the arrival doors, ready to surprise the woman he loved more than anything in the world. The flight from Frankfurt to Atlanta had been long, nearly 10 hours in the air. Nathan had barely slept, too excited about the reunion to rest. He kept imagining Sarah's face when she saw him. Would she scream with joy? Would she cry? Would she run into his arms? He played the scene over and over in his mind, each version more perfect than the last. He had even written a small speech in his head, things he wanted to say to her about how much he had missed her, how every day without her had felt like an eternity, how coming home to her made every hardship worthwhile. When the plane landed at Atlanta International at 3:15 p.m., Nathan had felt a rush of adrenaline. He was home. American soil, and in just a few minutes he would be holding his wife. He had grabbed his duffel bag from the overhead compartment, thanked the flight attendants who had thanked him for his service, and made his way through the jetway into the terminal. The airport was crowded, as it always was on a Saturday afternoon in October. Families reuniting, business travelers rushing to make connections, the constant hum of humanity in motion. Nathan had made his way through the terminal following the signs toward gate C-42. His heart was pounding in his chest, not from exertion but from pure anticipation. He had checked his watch. 3:35 p.m. Sarah's flight would be landing in about 12 minutes. He positioned himself near the gate, trying to find a spot where he could see her but where she wouldn't immediately spot him. He wanted that moment of surprise, that split second where she would see him and realize he was really there. But then, at 3:41 p.m., 6 minutes before Sarah's flight was supposed to land, Nathan saw something that made his blood run cold. There was Sarah, his wife, his partner, the woman he had pledged his life to, standing near gate C-42. But she wasn't alone. A man in an expensive gray suit stood close to her, too close. His hand was on her waist, fingers splayed possessively across the small of her back, and Sarah, his Sarah, was laughing. Not a polite, uncomfortable laugh, a genuine, intimate laugh. The kind of laugh she used to give Nathan in their early days of dating. Nathan felt the world tilt beneath him. His duffel bag slipped from his shoulder and hit the floor with a dull thud, but he barely registered it. He stood frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. This couldn't be real. This had to be a mistake. Maybe it was someone who looked like Sarah. Maybe it was an old friend, and the physical closeness was just Nathan's exhausted mind misinterpreting an innocent interaction. But then Sarah tilted her head back, that familiar gesture Nathan knew so well, and the man leaned down and kissed her neck. A soft, intimate kiss that spoke of familiarity and comfort, and Sarah didn't pull away. She leaned into it, her eyes closing in contentment, a smile playing on her lips. Nathan's hands clenched into fists at his sides. His breathing became shallow, rapid. The noise of the airport seemed to fade away, replaced by a rushing sound in his ears like he was underwater. 8 months he had been gone, living in a war zone, risking his life every single day. And this is what Sarah had been doing. He wanted to look away, to unsee what he was seeing, but he couldn't. He watched as Sarah reached up and touched the man's face, her fingers tracing his jawline with a tenderness that belonged to Nathan. He watched as they spoke to each other in low voices. Too quiet for Nathan to hear, but clearly intimate. He watched as the man's hand moved from Sarah's waist to her hip, pulling her closer, and he watched as Sarah allowed it, welcomed it, reciprocated it. Nathan's military training kicked in, the part of his brain that could stay calm and analytical even in the midst of chaos. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and pulled up his text message thread with James. Change of plans. Need you to document everything. Start recording when I give the signal. James, who had arrived on the same flight and was waiting near baggage claim, responded immediately. On my way. What's going on? Nathan didn't respond. He couldn't put into words what was happening. Instead, he focused on the practical steps. He needed evidence. Not for any legal reason, there were no children involved. No complex custody arrangements to worry about. But he needed evidence for himself, to prove that what he was seeing was real, that he wasn't losing his mind. He watched as Sarah and the mystery man continued their intimate display. They were standing near a Starbucks kiosk, partially obscured by a concrete pillar, clearly thinking they had some privacy in the crowded terminal. The man was tall, probably 6'2", with perfectly styled dark hair graying at the temples. He was well-dressed, the kind of expensive suit that cost more than Nathan made in a month. A Rolex watch glinted on his wrist. He had the look of success, of wealth, of someone who had never had to worry about sleeping in a bunker while mortars fell nearby. Nathan felt a rage building inside him unlike anything he had ever experienced. He had been trained to control his emotions, to stay calm under pressure, to make rational decisions even when adrenaline was flooding his system. But this was different. This wasn't a tactical situation. This was personal. This was his wife, his marriage, his entire life being destroyed right in front of his eyes. He took several deep breaths, trying to center himself, trying to think clearly about what to do next. Part of him wanted to walk away, to pretend he had never seen this, to get back on a plane and disappear. Part of him wanted to rush forward and physically attack the man who had his hands on his wife. But Nathan was a major in the United States Army. He had responsibilities, a reputation, a career. He couldn't afford to lose control no matter how much he wanted to. So instead, he waited. He watched and he planned. James arrived about 5 minutes later, slightly out of breath from rushing through the terminal. He was a shorter man, 5'9", stocky and muscular with a shaved head and a scar above his left eyebrow from a training accident years ago. He took one look at Nathan's face and knew something was catastrophically wrong. "What's going on, brother?" James asked quietly. Nathan didn't say anything. He just nodded towards Sarah and the mystery man. James followed his gaze, and Nathan watched as his friend's face went from confusion to shock to fury in a matter of seconds. "Oh no," James breathed. "Nathan, man, I'm so sorry. I'm so damn sorry." Nathan's voice, when he finally spoke, was eerily calm. "Get your phone out. Start recording. I want every second of this documented." James nodded and pulled out his phone, angling it carefully to capture Sarah and her companion without being obvious about it. The two men stood there in silence for several minutes, watching the betrayal unfold. Sarah and the mystery man seemed oblivious to everything around them, lost in their own little world. At one point, the man said something that made Sarah laugh so hard she had to cover her mouth with her hand. Nathan recognized that laugh. It was the same laugh she had given him on their first date when he had told a terrible joke about military rations. It was the laugh he had fallen in love with. And now she was giving it to someone else. Nathan felt something inside him break, a fundamental piece of his worldview shattering irreparably. He had believed in loyalty, in commitment, in the sanctity of marriage vows. He had believed that love could survive distance and hardship. He had believed in Sarah, and all of it had been a lie. "I'm going to confront them," Nathan said quietly. James looked at him with concern. "Are you sure, man? Maybe we should just leave, get out of here. Let your lawyer handle this." Nathan shook his head. "No, she needs to know that I know. She needs to face what she's done. I'm not going to let her keep living this lie." James nodded slowly. "Okay, I've got your back, whatever you need." Nathan appreciated the support more than he could express. He checked his uniform, making sure everything was in order. If he was going to do this, he was going to do it right. He was going to confront his cheating wife as Major Nathan Cross, United States Army, not as some jealous, emotional husband. He squared his shoulders, took one more deep breath, and started walking towards Sarah and her companion. Each step felt surreal, like he was moving through a dream or watching himself from outside his body. He was aware of other travelers around him, of the constant stream of humanity flowing through the terminal, but they all seemed distant, irrelevant. His entire focus was on the two people standing by that Starbucks kiosk, completely unaware that their world was about to explode. As he got closer, Nathan could hear snippets of their conversation. The man was talking about a house he was looking at in Miami, something about waterfront property and investment potential. Sarah was nodding enthusiastically, talking about how she could transfer her pharmaceutical job to Miami, how it would be a fresh start for them. For them. Like Nathan didn't even exist. Like 6 years of marriage meant nothing. Nathan was about 10 feet away when Sarah finally glanced up and saw him. The change in her expression was instantaneous and devastating. Her face went from relaxed and happy to shocked to terrified in the span of a heartbeat. The color drained from her cheeks. Her hand, which had been resting on the mystery man's chest, fell limply to her side. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like she had seen a ghost. In a way, Nathan supposed she had. He was supposed to be 8,000 miles away in Afghanistan, not standing in front of her in Atlanta International Airport. "Hello, Sarah," Nathan said, his voice calm and measured, despite the hurricane of emotions raging inside him. The mystery man, sensing the sudden tension, looked between Nathan and Sarah with confusion. "Sarah, who is this?" he asked. Nathan answered before Sarah could find her voice. "I'm Major Nathan Cross, United States Army, Sarah's husband." The silence that followed was deafening. The man's face went pale. Sarah started to speak, her voice coming out as a hoarse whisper. "Nathan, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be back until November." Nathan felt a bitter smile twist his lips. "I got rotated out early. Thought I'd surprise my wife. Looks like I'm the one who got the surprise, though." By this point, several travelers nearby had stopped to watch the unfolding drama. There was something magnetic about the scene, a soldier in uniform confronting a woman who was clearly not expecting him. People pulled out their phones, some recording, others just watching with obvious curiosity and judgment. The mystery man tried to step away, his face flushed with embarrassment and panic. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married. She told me she was divorced, that it was all finalized. I never would have—" Nathan held up a hand, cutting him off. "Save it. I don't care about your excuses. I care about the fact that you have your hands on my wife." He turned his attention back to Sarah, who was now crying, mascara beginning to run down her cheeks. 8 months, Sarah. 8 months I was deployed. 8 months I spent in a combat zone, wondering every day if I'd make it home. And this is what you were doing? This is how you were spending your time?" Sarah reached toward him, her voice desperate. "Nathan, please, let's not do this here. Let's go somewhere private where we can talk about this." "Private?" Nathan's voice rose slightly, his carefully controlled calm beginning to crack. "You didn't seem to care about privacy a minute ago when you were all over him. No, Sarah, we're doing this here, right now, in front of everyone. Because I want witnesses. I want people to see exactly who you are and what you've done." The crowd around them had grown larger, forming a loose circle around the three of them. Nathan could see other soldiers in uniform in the crowd, their faces grim and disapproving. He could see older couples shaking their heads in disgust. He could see young people with their phones out, recording every moment for social media. James had positioned himself off to the side, his phone held steady, capturing everything. Sarah's eyes darted around, taking in the crowd, the phones, the judgmental stares. She looked trapped, cornered, desperate for a way out that didn't exist. "It's not what you think," she said weakly. "Marcus and I, we just—" "Marcus," Nathan interrupted, looking at the mystery man. "So that's your name? Marcus what?" The man shifted uncomfortably. "Marcus Webb. Look, I'm sorry about this, I really am, but I think I should go—" "Oh no," Nathan said, his voice hard. "You don't get to run away that easily. You're a part of this too. You might not have known she was married, although I seriously doubt that, but you're still the man who was touching my wife. So, you're going to stand here and own your part in this." Marcus Webb looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. His expensive suit and confident demeanor had crumbled, leaving him looking small and pathetic. Nathan turned back to Sarah, his eyes boring into hers. "How long?" he asked. "How long has this been going on?" Sarah hesitated, clearly calculating whether to lie or tell the truth. Nathan could see the wheels turning in her mind. "The truth, Sarah. You owe me that much." 3 months, she whispered. "It started in July." July. Nathan felt like he'd been punched in the gut. July was when he had noticed her becoming distant, when the communication had started to drop off. He had attributed it to her being busy, to the stress of the separation. But no, it was because she had already replaced him. 3 months, Nathan repeated, his voice hollow. "So for 3 months, while I was video calling you, texting you, telling you how much I missed you and loved you, you were with him." Sarah was crying harder now, her whole body shaking with sobs. "I'm so sorry, Nathan. I never meant for this to happen." You were just gone for so long, and I was lonely, and Marcus was there, and I made a terrible mistake." "A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash," Nathan cut her off sharply. "A mistake is accidentally deleting an email. This wasn't a mistake, Sarah. This was a choice. You chose to betray me. You chose to break your vows. You chose him over me." He pulled off his wedding ring, the gold band he had worn for 6 years, and held it up for her to see. The crowd watched in rapt silence as Nathan took Sarah's left hand, none too gently, and placed the ring in her palm, closing her fingers around it. "This is over," he said firmly. "Our marriage is done. I want you out of my house. Pack your things and go stay with your mother or go stay with Marcus here. I don't care. But you're not setting foot in our home again." Sarah's sobs became almost hysterical. "Nathan, please don't do this. We can work through this. I love you, I really do. This thing with Marcus, it doesn't mean anything." "It doesn't mean anything?" Nathan's voice was incredulous. "You've been having an affair for 3 months and it doesn't mean anything? What would it take to mean something, Sarah? Would you have to marry him? Have his children? How long would you have kept this going if I hadn't come home early?" Sarah didn't have an answer for that. She just stood there crying, her mascara-stained face a mess, her body trembling. Nathan felt a moment of something that might have been pity, but it was quickly overwhelmed by the betrayal and rage he felt. Marcus Webb, who had been standing frozen throughout this exchange, finally found his voice. "Sarah, I think I should go. This is between you and your husband." He started to turn away, but Nathan's next words stopped him cold. "Tell me something, Marcus. Did you know she was married?" Marcus's face flushed red. "She told me she was separated, that the divorce was almost final. She said her husband was deployed and they had grown apart, that it was over between them long before I came into the picture." Nathan looked at Sarah with disgust. "So you've been lying to both of us, telling me everything was fine while telling him we were separated. That's a special kind of deception, Sarah. I almost have to admire the effort it took to maintain 2 completely different stories." He addressed Marcus again. "Let me tell you what's true. We were not separated. We were not getting divorced. I have been deployed serving my country, yes, but before I left, everything was fine between us. She told me she loved me. She told me she would wait for me. She promised me we would be okay. And apparently, all of that was a lie." Marcus looked at Sarah with something between anger and betrayal on his own face. "You told me you were divorced," he said accusingly. "You told me your husband was out of the picture. Jesus, Sarah, I wouldn't have started anything with you if I'd known you were still married." "So you do have some morals after all," Nathan said dryly. "Congratulations. Unfortunately, it's a little late for that. The damage is done." He looked around at the crowd that had gathered, easily 40 or 50 people now, all watching with varying expressions of shock, sympathy, and judgment. "I want everyone here to witness this," Nathan said, his voice carrying across the terminal. "I want you all to see what happens when someone betrays a service member, when someone can't keep their promises while their spouse is deployed defending this country. I want you to see the real cost of infidelity." Several people in the crowd nodded. Someone shouted, "She doesn't deserve you, soldier." Another voice called out, "Thank you for your service." A woman near the front of the crowd was crying, clearly moved by the scene. An older man in a Vietnam veteran's cap saluted Nathan, his face stern and disapproving as he looked at Sarah. Sarah seemed to finally realize the full scope of what was happening. This wasn't just a private confrontation between her and Nathan. This was a public exposure, a moment that was being captured on dozens of phones and would likely be shared across social media within hours. Her reputation, her dignity, her privacy, all of it was being stripped away in front of strangers. "Nathan, please," she begged, her voice desperate. "Please don't do this. I know I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but please don't humiliate me like this. Let's just go somewhere private." "You humiliated yourself," Nathan said coldly. "I'm just making sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." "You want to talk about humiliation?" How do you think I felt when I came home early to surprise my wife and found her in the arms of another man? How do you think I felt watching you laugh with him, touch him, kiss him? That's humiliation, Sarah. What you're feeling right now is just consequences. Before we continue with what happened next, I want to pause here for a moment. If you're invested in this story and you want to see how this situation unfolds, do me a favor, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me what you think about Nathan's decision to confront Sarah publicly. Do you think he's doing the right thing? Should he have handled this differently? The confrontation at Gate C-42 had reached a fever pitch. Airport security had been alerted by concerned travelers, and now 2 uniformed security officers were making their way through the crowd. Nathan saw them coming and knew his time was limited. He needed to finish this before they intervened and potentially escorted him away. "Sarah," Nathan said, his voice dropping lower, more intimate, forcing her to focus solely on him despite the crowd. "I loved you. I loved you more than anything in this world. When I was deployed, thoughts of you were what kept me going. When things got hard, when I was scared, when I saw things that no person should have to see, I thought about coming home to you. You were my light in the darkness. And you threw that away for what? For him?" He gestured dismissively at Marcus Webb, who looked increasingly uncomfortable with the entire situation. "For 3 months of whatever this was? Was it worth it, Sarah? Was it worth destroying 6 years of marriage? Was it worth betraying someone who would have died for you?" Sarah's response was barely audible. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." "But you did hurt me," Nathan said, and for the first time, his voice cracked with genuine emotion. "You hurt me in a way I didn't think was possible. I've been shot at, I've been in explosions, I've seen friends die in front of me. And none of it hurt as much as seeing you with him just now." The 2 airport security officers reached the edge of the crowd. "Folks, we need to break this up," one of them said, a middle-aged black man with sergeant stripes on his sleeve. "You're blocking the terminal." Nathan turned to the security officer and straightened to his full height, his military bearing evident. "I apologize, officer. I'm Major Nathan Cross, U.S. Army. I just returned from deployment and discovered my wife in an inappropriate situation with another man. I'm not causing any trouble, I'm just addressing the situation." The security officer's expression softened slightly. "I understand, sir, and thank you for your service. But we still can't have this large gathering blocking the terminal. I'm going to have to ask you all to move along." Nathan nodded. "I'm almost finished here." He turned back to Sarah one last time. "I've already contacted my attorney, Patrick Sullivan at Sullivan & Associates. You remember him, he handled our will when we got married. You'll be hearing from him within 48 hours. I want you out of the house. You can take your personal belongings, but everything else stays. The house is in my name, bought with my VA loan before we got married. You have no claim to it." Sarah's eyes widened. "Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't care," Nathan said bluntly. "Go stay with your mother in Roswell. Go move in with Marcus. Go rent an apartment. It's not my problem anymore. You should have thought about the consequences before you decided to cheat on your deployed husband." He pulled out his phone and opened up his banking app, quickly navigating through the screens while Sarah watched with growing panic. "I'm also removing you as an authorized user on all my accounts. As of right now, you have no access to any of my finances. I'd suggest you figure out your own financial situation pretty quickly." "Nathan, that's not fair," Sarah protested weakly. "I don't have enough saved to just start over like this. I need time." "Fair?" Nathan's laugh was harsh. "You want to talk about fair? Was it fair that you cheated on me while I was deployed? Was it fair that you lied to me for 3 months? Was it fair that you made me believe everything was okay while you were building a whole new relationship behind my back? Don't talk to me about fair, Sarah. You lost the right to expect fairness from me the moment you betrayed me." Marcus Webb, who had been trying to quietly slip away during this exchange, was stopped by James Rivera stepping into his path. "Hold on there, friend," James said, his Texas drawl thick. I don't think you get to just walk away from this. Marcus looked panicked. Look, I don't want any trouble. This is between them. I'm just going to go. What's your full name? James asked, pulling out his phone. And where do you work? Marcus's face went pale. Why do you need to know that? Because I think the people in your life should know what kind of man you are, James said evenly. The kind who has an affair with a married woman whose husband is deployed. I'm guessing you've got a wife or girlfriend of your own, don't you? They deserve to know the truth. This is harassment, Marcus stammered, looking around desperately for help. I don't have to tell you anything. You're right, you don't, Nathan interjected. But it doesn't matter. Your picture is already all over social media. See all those phones recording us? You're going to be famous, Marcus. You and Sarah both. The entire internet is going to know your faces, your story. I'm sure someone will identify you within a few hours. These days, there's no hiding from something like this. The reality of the situation seemed to dawn on Marcus Webb. His face went from pale to red as anger replaced fear. This is your fault, he said, pointing at Sarah. You told me you were divorced. You said there wouldn't be any complications. Now my life is going to be ruined because you lied. Sarah flinched at his words, the full weight of her situation crashing down on her. Not only had she destroyed her marriage, but she'd also destroyed whatever relationship she had with Marcus. In trying to hold on to both men, she'd ended up losing both. I'm sorry, she whispered, though it was unclear who she was apologizing to. I never wanted any of this to happen. And yet it did happen, Nathan said. Because you made choices, Sarah. Every single day for 3 months, you made the choice to continue this affair. You made the choice to lie to me. You made the choice to deceive both of us. These are the consequences of those choices. The security officer cleared his throat. Sir, I really need you all to move along now. I've been patient, but we have flights to catch and people to move through here. Nathan nodded. I understand. We're done here anyway. He looked at Sarah one last time, taking in her tear-stained face, her disheveled appearance, the broken look in her eyes. Part of him, a very small part, felt sorry for her, but the larger part, the part that was consumed by betrayal and hurt, felt nothing but contempt. Goodbye, Sarah, he said quietly. I hope whatever you got from this affair was worth everything you lost. Without waiting for her response, Nathan turned and walked away, James falling into step beside him. The crowd parted to let them through, several people reaching out to pat Nathan on the shoulder or offer words of support as he passed. Stay strong, soldier, an elderly woman said, squeezing his hand. My husband was Army too. I never would have done that to him. You deserve better. Thank you for your service, a young father said, his toddler perched on his hip. I can't imagine what you're going through, but you handled that with class. Nathan accepted their condolences with nods and quiet thank yous, but he kept moving, needing to put distance between himself and the scene of his marriage's death. Behind him, he could hear Sarah still crying, could hear Marcus Webb arguing with her, their voices fading as he walked away. If you're invested in this story, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me what you think about Nathan's decision to confront Sarah publicly.